Čaute, zdraví vás Jaro. Dnes mám pre vás veľmi zaujímavé video, pretože sa bude týkať cholesterolu a myslím si, že po zhliadnutí tohoto videa už nikdy vás nevystraší žiadny lekár tým, že máte vysoký cholesterol a môže vás to zabiť. Práve teraz vám zazdielam video dvoch lekárov, špecialistov, ktorí vám kompletne vysvetlia, ako to vlastne s tým cholesterolom je. A čo sa vám udeje, keď zjete jedlo s vysokým množstvom cholesterolu, a poviem, pozrite si ho až do konca, stojí to za to, je trošku dlhšie, zabijete 5 minút svojho života pozrením tohoto videa, ale myslím si, že to stojí za to, takže pozerajte, je to síce v angličtine, idú vám tam slovenské titulky, určite si ho pozrite až do konca.
Most people are operating under the assumption that eating saturated fat is bad and you only do it insofar as you want to taste it. And then, of course, there's a small group of people that love to eat organs and meats and really pack cholesterol and would argue that it doesn't matter if your LDL is 870, it's not going to impact your health. What's the reality around LDL, HDL, dietary cholesterol, saturated fat, at least in Europe?
So first, let's differentiate between cholesterol and fat, just for the listener, because we use them. So I don't want to make sure people understand. So cholesterol is a really complicated molecule. So it's a ringed molecule. God, I used to know exactly what its structure was, but like it could have 36 carbons for all I remember. It is a lipid, so it is a hydrophobic molecule that is synthesized by every cell in the human body. It is so important that without it, if you look at sort of genetic conditions that impair cholesterol synthesis, depending on their severity, they can be fatal in utero. So in other words, anything that really interferes with our ability to produce cholesterol is a threat to us as a species. And the reason for that is cholesterol makes up the cell membrane of every cell in our body. So, as you know, but maybe the listeners don't, even though a cell is a spherical thing, it has to be fluid, right? It's not just a rigid like sphere, like a blow up ball, right? It's got to be able to kind of move in this way to mesh with other cells. It also has to accommodate having porous structures that traverse its membrane to allow ions and things like that to go across. And it's cholesterol that gives the fluidity to that membrane. It's also, as you're alluding to, the backbone of some of the most important hormones in our body: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol. So we have this thing, super important. Okay. Then let's talk about, can you get cholesterol in your diet? Yes, you can eat foods that are rich in cholesterol. What was known in 1960, but somehow escaped everybody's imagination until finally the American Heart Association acknowledged this a few years ago, is that the cholesterol you eat does not really make it into your body. And the reason for that is it's esterified. So we have, and not to get too nerdy, but I really think it's important people understand how this thing works. So we have cells in our gut, and enterocytes. They're the endothelial cells of our gut. Each one of them has basically two transporters on them. So the first is called the Niemann-Pick C1 like-1 transporter. The second is called the ATP binding cassette G5G8. Okay, the Niemann-Pick C1 like-1 transporter will bring in any sterol, cholesterol, zoosterol, phytosterol, any sterol that fits through the door will come in. Virtually all of that is the cholesterol we produce that gets taken back to the liver, that the liver packages in bile and secretes. So that's what aids in our digestion, which is another thing I should have mentioned earlier. In addition to using cholesterol for cell membranes and hormones, we wouldn't be able to digest our food without cholesterol because it's what makes up the bile salts. So we probably manage to de-esterify 10 to 15% of our dietary cholesterol. So in other words, there are small amounts of dietary cholesterol that do make their way into our circulation, but it represents a small fraction of our total body's pool of cholesterol. Again,